Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video we had discussed about chapter 3 of the Indian Penal Code 1860. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. In today's video we are going to talk about chapter 4 of the Indian Penal Code. We'll go through the chapter and try to understand the substance therein. So if you are new here, you can like and subscribe to my channel to get the video notifications. So let's get started. So today we are going to learn chapter 4 that deals with general exceptions. So let's understand what general exceptions are. This chapter is a very important chapter of the Indian Penal Code, and therefore I have highlighted all the sections. Because all the sections are important, the entire chapter is very important, because this is the only chapter in the Indian Penal Code that talks about the exceptional situations in which, though that person may be committing a particular act or omission that will render it a crime, but he will not be penalized for that, because those acts will fall under the exceptional situations in which the Indian Penal Code will not penalize that offender or that person for the act that has been done by him. So these are the exceptional situations in which that person will be excused. Now, chapter 4 is a long chapter. It starts from section 76 and it ends in section 106. Now, I will divide this chapter into two parts, into two videos. The first part will be from general part, and from section 96 to section 106, the right of private defense is discussed. So we will cover that in a different video. So in this video, let's understand the general provisions. So first let's move on to section 76. It talks about act done by a person bound or by mistake of fact believing himself bound by law. So when a person is bound by law or by mistake of fact he believes that he is bound by law to do a certain act, and while doing that act he is found guilty of a particular offense. Now the section reads that nothing is an offense which is done by a person who is or who by reason of a mistake of fact and not by reason of a mistake of law in good faith believes himself to be bound by law to do it. So let's understand this. The first thing that we must notice in this section should be that the mistake that such person is believing that he is in a position to do so, to perform that certain act, that mistake should not be a mistake of law. It should be a mistake of fact, and it should be made in good faith. So say for example, if a soldier fires at a mob by order of a superior officer, who is so shooting that mob will not be committing any offense because he was under the order of the superior officer to do so. Now if an officer is arresting another person believing him to be the person he was supposed to arrest in good faith, then that will not also be counted as an offense because he was acting in good faith. Now let's move on to section 77. It says act of judge when acting judicially. It says nothing is an offense which is done by a judge when acting judicially in the exercise of any power which is or which in good faith he believes to be given to him by law. So if a judge who is sitting in a court is acting and he has mistakenly done anything by presuming that the law has enabled him to do so in good faith, then that act will not be considered as an offense if such judge has done that act while acting judicially. Now, section 78 talks about act done pursuant to the judgment or order of court. So nothing which is done in pursuance of or which is warranted by the judgment or order of a court of justice. Say for example, the court of justice has passed an order or a judgment, and something was told to do in that judgment or order, and anyone, any person has done something that was ordered by such order or judgment, then such act, if done whilst such judgment or order remains in force, so that order or judgment will have to be remain in force, and during that period of remaining in force of such order or judgment, that act is done in pursuance to that order or judgment, then it will be not considered as an offense, notwithstanding the court may have had no jurisdiction to pass such judgment or order, or provided that the person doing such act in good faith believes that the court had such jurisdiction. So maybe the court had no such jurisdiction to pass that order or judgment, but the person who was following that order or judgment and has done that act in pursuance of that order or judgment, he by mistake, because he is a layman, he doesn't know so much about the jurisdiction of the court, and he believed that this order or judgment was passed by a competent court, so it must have had a jurisdiction to pass such order or judgment. Now I have to do this to follow that order or judgment, so he has done that in good faith, so that will not also be considered as an offense. Now let's move on to section 79. It talks about act done by a person justified or by mistake of fact believing himself justified by law. So that person is believing by mistake of fact. I am hammering upon this point again and again. It always should be a mistake of fact, because mistake of law is no excuse. So by mistake of fact, if a person feels that I am justified to do this, I am by law bound to do this, then nothing is an offense which is done by any person who is justified by law, or who by reason of a mistake of fact and not by mistake of law in good faith believes himself to be justified by law. So either he is actually justified by law, or he believes in good faith by mistake of fact that he is justified by law to do so. Here is an example. It says, if a person sees another person trying to murder someone, then he will commit no offense if he tries to apprehend such person to bring him to justice. So that person who is witnessing a murder right before his eyes, he will try to apprehend such person who is trying to commit such murder. Now that person, if he tries to apprehend that person who is trying to commit a murder, and if he wants to bring him to justice, then he is actually working under a justified cause. So that will not be considered as an offense if he tries to apprehend such person to bring him to justice. Now let's move on to section 80. It talks about accident in doing a lawful act. It says nothing is an offense which is done by accident or misfortune and without any criminal intention or knowledge, in the doing of a lawful act, in a lawful manner, by lawful means, and with proper care and caution. So there are a number of elements here that are to be taken care of. The first thing is that the act must be an accident or misfortune. So either it is by accident or by a misfortune, and that act should be without any criminal intention or knowledge. So the person who is actually causing that shall not have any criminal intention or knowledge to do so, and it should be done in a lawful act and in a lawful manner by lawful means. So all the elements such as the act should be lawful, the manner in which such act is performed shall be lawful, the means by which such act was performed shall be also lawful, and the act should be done with proper care and caution. Let's understand this from an example. Say for example, the head of a hatchet flies off while working and hits a man standing nearby and kills him. Or let's understand this from a more simple example. Say for example, a man is working with a hammer. Now we all know that the hammer is made up of a metal piece that is stuck on a wooden stick. Now say for example, while working with that hammer, the person hits a nail with the hammer, and while doing so, the head of the hammer that is made of a metal piece flies off from the wooden stick and hits a person who is standing nearby, right in the forehead, in such a manner that such person who is hit by that hammer collapses right on the spot, and he suffers an internal hemorrhage or a severe condition like that, and eventually dies. So we can all understand the person who was working with the hammer had no such criminal intention or knowledge that such hammer will break and the metal piece will fly and hit the person who is standing nearby, and eventually that man will die. Now he was taking proper care and caution. He was doing a lawful act in a lawful manner by lawful means, but still it occurred due to an accident or misfortune. Now in that case, this person who was working with the hammer will not be penalized because of such act. Now let's move on to section 81. It talks about act likely to cause harm but done without criminal intent and to prevent other harm. So let's understand this section well. It says nothing is an offense merely by reason of its being done with the knowledge that it is likely to cause harm, if it be done without any criminal intention to cause harm and in good faith for the purpose of preventing or avoiding other harm to person or property. Say for example, the person who is committing such an act that he knows will likely cause a harm, but the intention behind causing such harm or actually doing that act was clean. That means that person had no criminal intent. He just tried to prevent other harm. How is that possible? Let's understand from a simple example. Say for example, a captain of a boat. There is a boat or a ship, as you can understand, and that boat or ship has a captain. Now that captain is in the charge of the conducts of the boat as to how the boat will move and where it will go. He makes all the decisions. The captain makes all the decisions of such boat or ship. Now that boat or ship crashes with another boat having two persons in it and kills those two persons. But the twist is that if that captain had not ordered that boat or ship to crash into that boat which had two persons in it and killed them, then such boat which the captain was in charge of would have hit another boat, and in that another boat there were 50 persons who would have instantly died due to such collision. So that captain of the boat basically saved 50% on that third boat while he crashed into the second boat that had two persons. So the first boat is where the captain is in charge, and the second boat is that which had two persons. The third boat had 50 persons. This first boat would have hit any of the two boats. It was inevitable. It had to hit any of the boats. The situation was such. Now the captain had to make a decision as to which boat he had to hit. Now he chose to hit the second boat which had two persons to save the third boat that had 50 persons. So even if the two persons that were in the second boat died due to such collision, and that collision happened due to a direct order from the captain of the first boat, still that captain of the first boat would not be penalized for killing those two persons, because he tried to save 50 persons on the third boat. That means he did an act that he knew would likely cause a harm, but he did it without any criminal intent or to prevent other harm, that is of a bigger nature. So this is what section 81 deals with. Now, explanation says that it is a question of fact in such a case whether the harm to be prevented or avoided was of a nature and imminent as to justify or excuse the risk of doing the act with the knowledge that it was likely to cause harm. So, the explanation clarifies it. It gives a bigger picture that the act and situation should be of such a nature and so imminent that it would then and there justify and excuse the risk of doing such, even with the knowledge that it would likely cause such harm. Now let's move on to the next section, that is section 82. It talks about act of a child under 7 years of age. This is a very simple section. It clearly says that nothing is an offense which is done by a child who is of 7 years of age. So any act that is performed by a child who is of 7 years of age or below 7 years of age will not be considered as a crime or offense. Now section 83 says that act of a child above 7 but under 12 of immature understanding will not also be considered as a crime or offense. So say for example the kid is of any age between 7 to 12, then in that situation, if that child has performed any act that has been considered as an offense or a crime under IPC, the first thing that needs to be clarified is that if he has any mature understanding or not. If he is of immature understanding and his age is between 7 to 12, then any act done by him that generally would be considered as a crime if done by a major person will not be considered as a crime because of his immature understanding and his age, that is between 7 to 12. Now section 84 says act of a person of unsound mind. So IPC excludes any person who is of unsound mind from criminalizing him or penalizing him. It says nothing is an offense which is done by a person who at the time of doing it by reason of unsoundness of mind is incapable of knowing the nature of the act. So it is thought that a person who is of unsound mind does not know what he is doing. He does not understand the seriousness or the nature of the act that he is performing. So even if he does something wrong, that will not be considered as a crime or offense if he is of unsound mind and he is incapable of knowing the nature of the act due to such unsoundness of mind. Now section 85 talks about act of a person incapable of judgment by reason of intoxication caused against his will. So nothing is an offense which is done by a person who at the time of doing it was under intoxication, and due to such intoxication he was incapable of knowing the nature of the act. He was not aware of the nature of the act. He didn't know what he was doing due to such intoxication, and provided that such intoxication was administered to him. So he did not take that intoxication by himself. He was administered such intoxication. Somebody has drugged him or somebody has administered such intoxication on him, and due to such administration of intoxication he did not know what he was doing. He was incapable of knowing the nature of the act, and that intoxication was administered to him without his knowledge or against his will. Say for example he was drugged at a party, something was mixed in his drink that he didn't knew about, or he was surrounded by a group of goons and they threatened him and made him take that drug. So it was either against his will or without his knowledge, and due to such administration of intoxication he was unable to understand the nature of the act that he was doing. That act will be excused. Now let's move on to the next section, that is section 86, which talks about offense requiring a particular intent or knowledge committed by one who is intoxicated. So in cases where an act done is not an offense unless done with a particular knowledge or intent. So section 86 talks about those situations in which the act which is considered as a crime or offense was done and such act needed a particular knowledge or intent, and a person who does that act in state of intoxication shall be liable to be dealt with as if he had the same knowledge as he would have if he had not been intoxicated. So that particular act requires a particular amount of knowledge to perform it, or a particular intention to perform it. If he was intoxicated and he has committed that offense or that act, then unless the thing which intoxicated him was administered to him without his knowledge or against his will, the matter should be looked into as to if he had the same knowledge during the time of intoxication that he would generally have to perform such act. Say for example, the person was firing a gun or making an explosive. Now, a person needs to be particularly skilled to operate a firearm or to make an explosive. He needs some certain kind of particular knowledge, or he has done something that needs a particular intention. So, if he had such intention or not needs to be checked, and whether he has done that act in intoxication that was administered to him against his will or without his knowledge or not. Now let's move on to section 87 that talks about act not intended and not known to be likely to cause death or grievous hurt done by consent. So it says that nothing which is not intended to cause death or grievous hurt and which is not known by the doer to be likely to cause death or grievous hurt. Say for example, a person is told to do a certain act. He does not know that the outcome of such act would cause death or grievous hurt, or he did not intend to cause death or grievous hurt. Then if that is an offense by reason of any harm which it may cause or be intended by the doer to cause to any person above 18 years of age who has given consent, whether express or implied, to suffer that harm, or by reason of any harm which it may known by the doer to be likely to cause to any such person who has consented to take the risk of that harm. So if the person is a major and he has given consent that yes, I want to be a part of this act, and the people who were engaged in that act, neither of them had any intention to cause death or grievous hurt, or neither of them knew that there is a possibility of an outcome of death or grievous hurt due to the doing of such act. So in that case also, anything that is committed by any person which resulted in such death or grievous hurt would not criminalize or penalize such person who has committed that act. Let's understand this from a simple example. Say for example, two persons, both of whom are adult, they decide to fence each other. Fencing is a sport that involves a particular kind of sword. It has a pointy tip, but it has no sharp edges. So they start fencing each other for amusement. Then it is already an implied agreement that both of them have consented to suffer any harm which by the course of such fencing in amusement may generally accrue. Now if that person was foul playing, then that is a different issue. But if they were both playing fairly, then if someone is hit and he was hit severely that caused grievous hurt or death, then the other person who has hit such person without such intention of causing death or grievous hurt, then that person will not be penalized for that. Now let's move on to section 88 that talks about act done in good faith and with consent for person's benefit not to cause death. So it says nothing which is not intended to cause death is an offense by reason of any harm which it may cause or be intended by the doer to cause or be known by the doer to likely cause
to any person for whose benefit it is done in good faith and who has given a consent, whether express or implied, to suffer that harm or to take the risk of that harm. So if any act is done in good faith and with consent, then it will not be considered as an offense even if it caused a death or any other grievous hurt. We need to understand this section well. The act was not intended to cause death. It was done by consent or in good faith for a person for whose benefit that act was done. Let's understand this section with a simple example. Say for example, a doctor performs a critical surgery with the consent of the patient or with a family member of that patient who was working as a guardian of that patient. So if the doctor has consulted his patient that I want to perform a surgery upon you and try to cure you. Now that person has either consented or maybe the person was in coma and any legal guardian or any other family member who was in a position to give such consent on behalf of that patient who was in coma did give consent to the doctor that yes, you go ahead with that surgery and perform it. Now that act was done to save the patient but not to cause the death of that patient. But yes, that operation or surgery did have a chance that it may cause death. If the surgery failed, then it may jeopardize the situation of the patient and it may result in the death of the patient. But still, that surgery was very much needed for that particular patient, and that patient had either given consent to perform that surgery himself or his family member has given such consent. Then if the doctor performs such critical surgery but such surgery had failed somehow and the patient died while acting in good faith with due care and precaution, so that means the doctor had taken due care and precaution, still the surgery failed and the patient died, so that doctor will not be penalized for such act. That is what this section talks about. Now section 89 says act done in good faith for benefit of child or insane person by or by consent of guardian. So nothing which is done in good faith for the benefit of a person under 12 years of age or of unsound mind or by consent, either express or implied, of the guardian or other person having lawful charge of that person is an offense by reason of any harm which it may cause or be intended by the doer to cause or be known by the doer to likely to cause to that person. So let's understand this section. If there is any minor person or any person of unsound mind, so either the person is below 12 years of age or is of unsound mind, and any person who is a legal guardian of that minor or that unsound person, and he gives consent either expressly or impliedly to perform an act that would be for the benefit of that person under 12 years of age or that person of unsound mind. So it is basically done for the benefit of that person or in good faith. So the criteria that needs to fulfill so that section 89 can apply will be the child should be below 12 years of age, or the person may be of unsound mind, consent may be express or implied, guardian who is giving consent shall have lawful charge of that minor or that person of unsound mind, and the act that is to be performed shall be done in good faith and for the benefit of such person. Now if due to such act anything wrong happens, then that will not make these persons who had given the consent or who had performed the act liable for any criminal offense. However, the proviso mentions all the exceptions that will not attract section 89. So the first exception is that it shall not extend to the intentional causing of death or to the attempting of causing death. So there shall not be any intention to cause death or attempt to cause death. Secondly, the second exception is that it shall not extend to the doing of anything which the person doing knows to be likely to cause death. That means he shall not even have the knowledge that this particular act may cause death for any purpose other than preventing of death or grievous hurt or the curing of the grievous disease or infirmity. So if the person was suffering from any grievous disease or infirmity, then that is a different issue. But except that issue, the second exception is that even the knowledge that such act, if performed, would cause death shall not be there. So there shall not be any slightest knowledge of the act may have caused or may likely cause death. Now thirdly, the third exception is that it shall not extend to the voluntarily causing of grievous hurt or to the attempting to cause grievous hurt. So voluntarily causing of grievous hurt or no attempt to cause grievous hurt shall be there, unless it was for the prevention of death or grievous hurt or curing any grievous disease or infirmity. Fourthly, the last exception is that this exception shall not extend to the abatement of any offence, to the committing of which offence it would not extend. So it shall not extend to any abatement of offence, the committing of which offence it would not extend to it. So the exceptional situations that are mentioned in the provisos are that intentional causing of death or attempting of causing of death shall not be there, knowingly causing death or grievous hurt shall not be there, voluntarily causing death or grievous hurt shall not be there, and abatement of offence or its commission shall not be there. Now let's understand this with a simple example. It says that if a person in good faith consents that a surgery for a stone removal from the child's body, so the child had a stone in his body and that had to be removed through a surgery. So a person in good faith has consented for the surgery knowing that such operation may kill the child but not actually intended to kill the child, but rather to do that for the child's benefit. Then if such act is performed and something wrong happens, then that would not amount such act as to any crime or offence. Now section 90 talks about consent known to be given under fear or misconception. So if a person has given consent to a particular act under a fear of injury, that if I do not give such consent I may suffer an injury, he was under such fear, or under a misconception of fact, he somehow did not understand the original fact and he was under some kind of misconception of fact, and due to such misconception of fact or under such fear of injury he had consented to do such act. And if the person doing the act knows or has reasons to believe that the consent was given in consequence of such fear or misconception, then such consent was not a valid consent. Now let's understand the consent of an insane person. So it is said that if the consent is given by a person who from unsoundness of mind or intoxication is unable to understand the nature and consequence of that to which he gives consent, then it will be an invalid consent. Also a consent of a child, unless the contrary appears from the context, if the consent was given by a person who is under 12 years of age and he did not know the actual nature or consequence of that consent, then that will not also be thought to be a valid consent. Now section 91 talks about exclusion of acts which are offences independently of harm caused. So the exceptions in section 87, 88 and 89 do not extend to acts which are offences independently of any harm which they may cause or be intended to cause or be known to be likely to cause to the person giving the consent or on whose behalf the consent is given. So section 91 is basically an exceptional section to the sections 87, 88 and 89. So section 87, 88 and 89 talks about certain situations in which an act becomes an offense and those offenses are excluded. Now if that act, irrespective of their nature, situation or position, as explained under section 87, 88 or 89, irrespective of those situations, if they are independently an offense, so whatever may be the situation, that act was independently an offense, then it will be considered as an offense even if they were done under good faith or not. So good faith is not anymore a condition to be taken into account. Section 91 excludes those acts that are independently an offense irrespective of their positions in section 87, 88 and 89. So that is what section 91 says. Let's understand this by a very simple example. It says that causing miscarriage. Say for example, a woman is pregnant and she is carrying a child in her womb. Now miscarriage means to destroy such child in a womb. Now if someone has intentionally caused a miscarriage with or without consent of the woman, then that will not fall under the general exceptions, because causing miscarriage is in itself an offense under the Indian law. Now if such act was to save the woman, if it was done in good faith for the purpose of saving the life of the woman, say for example the woman would have died if such child was born, the child was in such a condition in the womb, then that was done to save the life of the woman in good faith, so that is excluded. But generally causing miscarriage is an offense independently of any harm that it may cause or not. Therefore even if that woman who was carrying such child in her womb has consented to such miscarriage, that would also make it a crime, because causing miscarriage is independently considered as a crime under the Indian Penal Code. Now let's move on to section 92. It says act done in good faith for benefit of person without consent. So nothing is an offense by reason of any harm which it may cause to a person for whose benefit it is done in good faith, even without that person's consent, if the circumstances are such that it is impossible for that person to signify consent, or if that person is incapable of giving consent and has no guardian or other person in lawful charge of him from whom it is possible to obtain consent in time for the thing to be done with benefit. So say for example, if the person was in such a position that he could not give consent and a certain act needed to be done for the benefit of such person who could not give such consent to perform such act upon him, and such act was done in good faith by the person who was about to perform it. So if any harm arises out of it due to performing such act, then that will not be considered as a crime. So the essential criteria that needs to be fulfilled in order to attract section 92 are that the person should be unable to give his own consent, the act shall be done in good faith, the person shall have no legal guardian to consent on behalf of him within a specified reasonable time, and such act was done for the benefit of that person who was unable to give his own consent, and that act may be done without consent. So if all these criteria are fulfilled, then section 92 says that that act will not be considered as a crime even if it has inflicted any harm upon such person. Now the provisos talk about some exceptional situations, some exceptions that will render it to be a crime. So what kind of situations are excluded from section 92's immunity? It says that the first proviso says that intentional causing of death or attempting to cause death
will not be considered as a immunity under section 92, or knowingly causing death or grievous hurt won't also provide an immunity under section 92. Voluntarily causing death or grievous hurt will also not give immunity to that person for causing such harm under section 92, and abatement of offense or its commission will also not be providing any immunity under section 92 to the person who has done such wrong. Now the explanation says that mere pecuniary benefit is not benefit within the meaning of section 88, 89 and 92. So pecuniary means monetary. So monetary benefits are not actual benefits that are mentioned in section 88, 89 and 92. So if any person is thinking that if I commit such act that will make monetary gains, so I will have pecuniary benefits out of it, then that will not be considered as a benefit under section 88, 89 and 92. Pecuniary benefits are not benefits that are acknowledged under section 88, 89 and 92. So let's understand this from an example. Say for example, a person was riding a horse and he fell down from that horse, and now he is unconscious because he fell down on the ground and hit by his head, and he is now unconscious. He was subsequently found by a surgeon. Say for example, a surgeon was passing on that particular road and he found that person. Now that surgeon, by examining that person who was unconscious, understood that an immediate surgery is needed to save that person. Say for example, he was suffering from a particular internal brain hemorrhage or something like that. So that surgeon understood immediately that a surgery is needed to save that person. But on the spot he found no legal guardian in time to take such decision as to whether such surgery was to be performed or not. Now this person is also unconscious. He won't be consenting on behalf of his own. Now that surgeon did not waste any time. He did not wait for anyone's consent. He performed the surgery to save the person with good faith and due care. This surgeon has done no wrong, even if something adverse happened to that man. So say for example, even if the person upon whom the surgery was performed dies out of the consequence, then also that surgeon had done no wrong, because he understood using his medical mind that this person needed an immediate surgery and there was no one to consent on his behalf, and that man was also unconscious. He could not give consent on behalf of his own. Now let's move on to section 93 that talks about communication made in good faith. It says no communication made in good faith is an offense by reason of any harm to the person to whom it was made, if it is made for the benefit of that person. This is a very small section. Let's understand it from a very simple example. Say for example, a person was suffering from a particular ailment. He did not know about his ailment. He had no idea as to what had happened to him. He was experiencing severe pain in his body and something like that. Now he went to a doctor. He consulted him. The doctor performed all the checkups that was needed to do. He performed all the tests and the reports came. Now this doctor saw the reports and understood what has happened to that man. Now that doctor also understood that it was his duty to tell the person about his ailment so that such ailment could be cured, or he could follow a particular routine and lifestyle and go through such kind of medications that were needed for his recovery. Now he called up his patient and told him the actual scenario, that you have developed such kind of ailment in your body. Out of shock of having such kind of ailment in his body, the person died out of a heart attack. So he could not bear the news that how could I develop such kind of ailment in my body, and he died out of shock after hearing such news from his doctor, or after knowing from his doctor that he had developed such an ailment in his body. Now this will not criminalize or penalize the doctor. So the doctor will not be guilty of any offense because the doctor has communicated in a good faith. He was supposed to communicate the person about his ailment. So that is what he had done. He has acted in good faith. He has communicated that person, his patient, in good faith. The patient could not bear the news and died out of shock. That is not the fault of the doctor. So this is what section 93 says. Now let's move on to section 94. It talks about act to which a person is compelled by threats. So it says that except murder and offenses against the state punishable with death. So the act of murder or any act that is an offense against the state that is punishable with death. So these offenses are excluded from this section. But any other offense that was performed by a person because such person was under compulsion, he was compelled to do such act by threats. Someone had threatened that person, you have to perform this offense, otherwise you will be dealt with in a particular manner. He was threatened, and at the time of doing it, that act reasonably caused the apprehension that instant death to that person will otherwise be the consequence, provided that person doing the act did not of his own accord or form a reasonable apprehension of harm to himself short of instant death, place himself in the situation by which he came subject to such constraint. So he shall not be subjecting him to such constraint. He shall not be a part of anything that had subjected him to fall under such threat or compulsion. Say for example, that person was mingling with antisocial peoples, and now those antisocial people have put him under such compulsion, or they have threatened him that you have to perform this act, this offense for us, or else you will be dealt with in a particular way. This man was under a threat or under a compulsion, but who has put that person in that situation? He has put himself in that situation. Now explanation says that a person who of his own accord or by reason of a threat of being beaten joins a gang of dacoits, knowing their character, is not entitled to the benefit of this exception. So if the person has on his own accord done so, knowing the character, knowing the situations and the outcomes, the possibilities, then that will not be an exception under this section, or on the grounds of having been compelled by his associates to do anything that is an offense by law. Now explanation 2 says that a person seized by a gang of dacoits and forced by threat of instant death to do a thing which is an offense by law, for example, a smith compelled to take his tools and to force the door of a house for the dacoits to enter and plunder is entitled for the benefit of this exception. So say for example, if a person, say for example, he was a smith, he had tools. Now a gang of dacoits has targeted a particular house, and they knew that if we want to plunder that house, if we need to enter that house, we need a particular person with tools to break open the door for us. Now they had hijacked this person, this smith, and they had told that we will kill you if you do not open the door with your tools for us to plunder that particular house. And that smith acted under such fear of imminent life threat, then the breaking open of that door using his tool is generally an offense, but that will not be considered as an offense considering the situations that he was under imminent threat of life under section 94. Now let's move on to the last section for this video, that is section 95, where the general provision will end, and after that from section 96 the right of private defense will start. So let's understand section 95. It says act causing slight harm. It says that nothing is an offense by reason that it causes or intended to cause or is known to likely to cause any harm that is so slight in nature that no person of ordinary sense and temper would complain of such harm. So if the harm is of a very slight nature, that no person of ordinary sense and temper would complain of such harm, then that will not be considered as an offense under section 95. So that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.